Blue skies all the way. We laugh, we joke, we sing. What a beautiful day. Not a cloud in our sight. It's such an adventure, my baby, you and I. Water's crystal clear. Reality so far from here. Never wanna leave this place.
Welcome back to Miami, Florida. I am Isaac Grillo, your host as always for our Toast to Fridays, with our sponsor as always, Toast Vodka. So today we're doing something a little bit different. So we started this whole we were all stuck indoors. We couldn't go out to bars. We couldn't celebrate Friday nights like we used to. We couldn't go to happy hour. So what we wanted to do is bring you a little bit of education, make some cocktails, and play a little music and have a little fun on Friday nights. Now, thankfully, the restaurant is finally open. We're all under new procedures, but we are moving forward. And I have switched venues, so I'm actually happily broadcasting from Toast Distillers in Miami, Florida, which will be our new home for probably the rest of this segment. Today we're making an iconic American cocktail called the Martini. Not sure if you guys have ever heard of a Martini, but it's probably one of the most well-known drinks that the Americans have ever made, and it's been consumed for many, many years in massive quantities. So let's talk a little bit about it. The Martini in general, where did it come from? So there's a little bit, when it comes to the history, there's a little bit of loose interpretation. As most cocktails, nobody knows exactly how it happened. We all had the same ingredients at similar places at similar times. So often good bartenders were making drinks out of what they had. There are several documentations that say that the Martini originated from the Knickerbocker Hotel in New York, which is a strong contender. They also say Martini Rossi, which is a brand of vermouth, which came out in the mid-1800s. Which is when the Martini was invented, had something to do with it. But most people believe that it had something to do with a place called Martinez, California. So Martinez, California was a place in California which is known where gold miners would be. And the story goes that there was a gold miner that hit his fortune. He wanted to celebrate. He went into Martinez and asked the bartender to, actually asked him for a bottle of champagne. The bartender said, "We don't have any champagne. Let me make you something close or not close at all." And he actually invented the Martini. So on this particular occasion, exactly how the story goes, we're not sure, but we're probably sure that had something to do with this guy having a great time, wanting a great drink to celebrate his great experience. So the original Martini started off with a martini glass and gin. Gin, vermouth, and lemon is really how the original Martini started, and it kept going like that for many, many, many years. Also, the original recipes that we find, there's Jerry Thomas, a very famous historian who wrote cocktail books, had a recipe in his book that said 2 small cups wine, 2 small cups vermouth, and a lemon twist, and that was the recipe for a Martini. So this has evolved, and it's come a long way since then. But I'm actually gonna make you an original version of that Martini with vodka. So what we would call this Martini today is a 50-50 Martini. So basically I'm doing equal parts. The 2 small cups of wine, we don't know how much were in them, how big this Martini was. So today we're gonna make it a little bit more accurate. And I'm gonna use exactly 1.5 ounces of dry vermouth and Toast vodka. So I'm gonna put these 2 ingredients in here. We talk about vermouth. Vermouth is also not as well known as of coming years, it's gotten more and more well known in the United States, but this is a spirit that's been consumed around the world for a long, long time. So let's talk about the history of vermouth for a brief second. What is it? Where is it from? How did it originate? This is an interesting spirit because they've been making wine, and there are dates of fortified wine, which is what vermouth is, that date back to 1000 BC. I'm not sure how good you are at math, but 1000 BC is a long time ago. So basically what they were doing is they were being able to create wine as soon as people were making wine wherever they were in the world. This particular dates back to China, and they were using aromatics to aromatize the wine. So they were changing the wine's characteristics. They were also adding sometimes sugar to sweeten it up a bit. So they were doing something similar to the process of bitters, which came soon after, where they were adding their botanicals, aromatics, barks, woods, spices to make a different style of spirit. So when we fast forward a few hundred years, the reason we talk about the history of the Martini and Rossi started as a company around the mid-1800s, and that's why it has some accreditation to the origination of this drink. But we all know that vermouth plays a key role in making this cocktail. We also want to treat our vermouth like wine. You open a bottle of vermouth, it's just like you open a bottle of wine. If it's a white vermouth, you want to keep it in your fridge. If it's a red vermouth, you want to keep it in your fridge. The shelf life is similar to wine, so you want to keep it sustainable for as long as possible. Today I'm using a French vermouth called Dolin Blanc. And again, the reason they used vermouth with gin is because they had similar aromatics in them. So you have juniper, coriander, you always have lemon peel. So they kind of correlated, they play very, very well together. So today when we're using vodka, this is basically going to flavor our vodka, so I feel it very important to use a bit of vermouth. Get this nice and cold. It's also very important when you make martinis, which I'll be showing you through, I'm going to make a few today, about your dilution process. You want this to be nice and cold, but people who drink martinis want to taste their booze. So this particular cocktail, which is like the original traditional martini, is now what we would call a wet martini or a 50-50 martini. And we're going to garnish it with just a little bit of lemon peel. This, I rarely use olives with. I really want the citrus notes to come out. The lemon brightens up the drink quite amazingly. And you really have a cold, boozy, delicious, celebratory cocktail, the 50-50 martini. I'm going to hand this one off to my cameraman because he deserves it. He's been working really hard. Let me know how that goes. And I'm going to move into our next cocktail. So the next style we want to talk about the verbiage of martinis. So how do we order a martini when we go to a bar, and what does it mean? So for me, there's a few very important questions that you need to ask or be asked of you when you're ordering a drink at the bar. First is if you want to use gin or vodka. Remember, the original recipe was always made with gin. Vodka came in about 80 years ago is when it started to play a little bit more of a higher role in the martini. The previous 80 years, it was gin forward all the time. Again, those botanicals play very well against the vermouth that we always want to use. So as we move forward, people started wanting less of vermouth, especially in the American market particularly, not so much in the UK market. People were less experienced with vermouth and really just wanted cold gin, cold vodka with a slight hint of the vermouth. So we're going to make what I would call a traditional dry martini today. And what makes it dry? We're using dry vermouth. When we talk about vermouth, there's actually three predominant styles of vermouths produced all around the world. They're kind of easy to remember because you have white and red. One's dry, one's sweet. And then we also have a version of a sweetened white called Bianco, which they add a little bit more sugar to. So I only like to use the dry vermouth in this particular cocktail. But now I'm going to change the ratio a bit. So before I made that 50-50, which is kind of from the original recipe, the new palate of everybody has kind of morphed into a little bit more spirit heavy. So when this cocktail came about, it really was called for 5-to-1. So we're going to do 2 ounces of our toast vodka, and I'm going to do about a ½ ounce of our dry vermouth. I put my dry vermouth in. I'm going to add 2 ounces of my toast. Now we're starting to talk about a very booze-forward, stirred cocktail. It has a nice aromatic note to it from the vermouth. And now we'll talk about the proper dilution. So I always stir my cocktails. You may have seen James Bond. Shaken adds an element to a martini that is sometimes required. But for me and most martini drinkers, we don't want it shaken. It adds too much dilution. So what I want is to put my booze in first, fill it up with a little ice just so it is above the glass, above the alcohol inside the glass, and give it a nice, nice stir. Just like in the past when making shaken cocktails, I knew that when my tin was ice cold, that my drink was getting ice cold and ready to drink. Same thing happens with this cocktail. So I've stirred it very nicely. I can feel it starting to frost up and getting cold. Now I know it's ready. I also always want to serve a martini in an ice cold glass. These are meant to be drinking very quickly. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mad Men or the 1940s, 50s. They were doing the 3 martini lunches. This is how they would drink them, and it was curtailed quite a bit because I don't know how productive you could be after 3 martinis at lunch. But it was a very booze-forward, strong cocktail. So it was meant to be drank quickly, but also have a high ABV. So I'm going to pour this drink out. So again, this is cold toast vodka with a little bit of botanicals from garnishes on the planet. Then you would add a lot more olive juice. For me, I like a really crisp and the spirit to show kind of martini. So this would be our second martini, a more traditional martini. And I'm going to pass this off to my cameraman, but don't drink it quite yet. He's doing the 3 martini lunch version of our shoot today. Now I'm going to make a riff on this. So toast vodka, as we've talked about in previous shows, is all local. It's all from Florida ingredients. It's distilled from corn and coconut water. It's also cut with water and coconut water. So it's still not coconut flavored vodka, but it has a really soft, gentle, nice mouthfeel. And I thought I'd do something fun today and make a martini out of that. So I'm still going to use toast vodka, 2 ounces. Again, martinis are meant to be strong. If you do want a softer version, I recommend the 50-50 martini. It's excellent. Today I use the same dry vermouth that I used before and the French vermouth. But last night I toasted out some coconut and I infused it into the vermouth. So you'll see in the color, beautiful color. Again, this adds to the botanicals. It adds to the aromas that come out of it. So you already have the citrus and spice notes. I'm adding that toasted coconut to add a little bit more depth. So here I'm going to use a 1/2 ounce again. Smells amazing. Again, I personally don't like martinis without any vermouth, although they have their place in the market. But there's no right or wrong way to drink, so drink them however you want. Again, same thing with ice. I'm going to fill it just so it starts to peek out over my spirits. That's perfect. And I want to stir it down till it all starts getting incorporated and my yari or my mixing glass gets really nice and cold. That looks like it. Feels cold, looks cold. Pop that into my chilled cold martini glass or coupe glass. So this is an interesting riff, very easy to do on a traditional martini that you can make at home. And it balances perfectly well with toast vodka. Again, I'm going to use a lemon peel here. I really want the lemon to pair with the vermouth as we spoke about before. If you notice, I've peeled them properly so that there's very little pith and I get the most out of my oils in here. So my lemon oils are very fragrant, but there's also light, fruitier oils that I want to get into the drink. So I'm just going to lightly squeeze, and the heavy, bitterer oils will fall in front of the glass while my other ones fall into the glass. I'm going to give this a nice rub around the rim. I really want the smell of lemon to complement the martini that I just made. And this one I'm going to drink. Really nice. So still very, very spirit forward. I get some nice botanical aromatic notes of from the vermouth. And that hint of toasted coconut adds a really nice depth that I think is perfect for any warm environment or any cold environment. I happen to be in Miami, so I'm enjoying this cocktail a lot. I want to talk one more second about how we order and what options we have. So when we talk about dry, if we really want a dry, bone-dry martini with no vermouth whatsoever, it's traditionally called a naked martini. If you're making one with vodka, it is traditionally called a kangaroo. If you're making one instead of olives and with onions, it's called a Gibson. And then a martini that was made famous by James Bond, and also one of my favorites, is a blend of vermouth, gin, and vodka called a Vesper. So take some of these notes when you go, try them out at home, and when you go into a bar, try your favorite version out of it, and see which one you like best. Again, we're always here for Toast to Fridays on Friday night. Want to bring them back up? So they're only half gone, so that's not too bad. So these are basically our original recipe, which is half equal parts spirits and vermouth. A more traditional recipe nowadays, which is 2 ounces of vermouth to 2 ounces of spirits to a ½ ounce of vermouth. And then the same recipe, but I infuse the vermouth with coconut. So again, Toast to Fridays. Thank you very much. Join us every week at 6 p.m. We do this live. You can find us on Instagram at toastvodka.com, or at toastvodka, excuse me. And then you can find us on YouTube at Toast Distiller's channel. So I'll talk to you guys next week. Have a great weekend and enjoy your martinis.
Blue skies all the way. We laugh, we joke, we sing. What a beautiful day. Not a cloud in our sight. It's such an adventure, my baby, you and I. Water's crystal clear. Reality so far from here.